So as you're taking your seat, I would ask you a question. And this would be a question for parents especially, but anybody who has been around a child can feel free to answer this question. Because when you ask a child to do something, it's almost like they're preconditioned with the response. So you ask a child to do something, the automated question or response you get back from them is, why? Why? It's like it doesn't make a difference what you ask. It's like they've already predetermined whatever's gonna come out of your mouth. I am gonna respond with, of course, parents respond with, because I said so. That's our paternal right. That is what we have earned as a parent to say, because I said so. I want you to do your homework. I want you to take a bath. I want you to change your underwear, kid. Why? Why? Because you smell like cheese. It's about time you take a bath. And it's funny because we are called to have childlike faith. Because I think we can learn something from children because they start with why. I think it indicates a genuine desire and interest to understand. I really want to understand. But isn't it funny how we get older, we don't start with the why, we start in a different place because you don't start with why when somebody asks you to do something. It's really weird because when you meet a guy, you meet somebody else and you walk up to a guy, obviously we're gonna be like, hi, I'm LB, what's your name? Rick. Hey, Rick, first question we ask each other as men is, what do you do? We start with the what. Adults, we start with what do you do? We don't start with why do you do? Because it doesn't make, isn't it funny how as we get older, we lose the wonderment of why and we settle into the what? Yeah. Today we're gonna talk about the why. In fact, I want you to look at your neighbor and say, why do you do? I know it's really bad grammar, but it illustrates the point. Why do you do blank? Why do you do whatever it is you do? Why are you a parent? Why are you married? Why do you take those classes? Why are you studying that exam? Why? It's a great place to start. Why do you do? Have you ever thought about why do you do? It's easy to talk about what do you do, and based upon the quality of the answer, I may or may not want to continue the conversation. What do you do? Oh, that's cool. It's like I'm talking to somebody. What do you do? I'm a pastor. I'm like, oh, no, I don't want to talk to that. It's because a lot of times why we start with the what is I think our worth is tied to our work. And often we prove our value and our worth with what we do. And success is found in the what we do, what we accumulate, what we make, what we do. That's where we find success, but significance is found in the why. Significance is found in the why you do it. We don't need more of something. We need to understand why we do something. And so today, if you are not a note taker, this is the ideal day for you to become a note taker. You will impress your friends. It is 3 simple words. Here's all we're going to do. First word is why. Say why. Oh, 82% participation. Here we go. Say who. That was better. The third word is where. I love it. We're going to look at 3 words today. Why? Why do you do? Who and where? I got one good amen over here. And I've been really arrested with this idea of why for the last several months. Over summer, we have a thing called Staff Advance. And Pastor Stephen was leading our staff through an exercise of discovering the why. And we had a day to spend with him as campus leaders talking about why. It was 10 hours of full on, here is why we do what we do. And I don't think I've ever been more excited about the church than I am in this season. I've been a part of this thing for a decade, but something was awoken, something was released inside of me. And it didn't come from what we're gonna do next. It came from a greater understanding of why we're doing it. To illustrate it with a movie, I would submit to you probably the greatest movie of all time. Of course, I'm talking about Rocky IV. Oh yes, Rocky IV. Why? Because he goes back and he rediscovers the eye of the tiger. And he beats the Russian. I mean, it ended the Cold War. Get your history right. I think it could end nuclear proliferation if we all watched it again. But I think today some of you are going to rediscover the eye of the tiger. I think some of you are going to discover maybe for the very first time why. Because here's what I believe about these 3 words. I do believe they're connected. Because the why is all about taking a who to a where. I believe that. I believe a why, a great why, a sustaining why is taking a who to a where. And we're going to learn from one character in scripture tonight. Our guide is going to be a guy named Nehemiah. And when Pastor Stephen first talked about this idea of why, I was awake till 4 a.m. I could not fall asleep because I was so excited about it. And what I want to try to do today is get out of me the excitement and the passion around the why into you, because I believe that if we can understand our why, what does not matter, and we will change this world for the glory of God. And at about 3 a.m, I started reading Nehemiah, and this is my ramblings from 3 a.m. And it's just 4 verses of scripture from a guy named Nehemiah. And he's gonna show us how to discover or rediscover the why. It says this in Nehemiah chapter 1, verses 1-4. It says, the words of Nehemiah, son of Hakaliah. So if you're pregnant and looking for a name, that would be available to you, Hakaliah. In the month of Kislev in the 12th year, while I was in the citadel of Susa, Hanai, one of my brothers, came from Judah with some other men, and I questioned them about the Jewish remnant that had survived the exile and also about Jerusalem. They said to me, those who survived the exile and are back in the province are in great trouble and disgrace. The wall of Jerusalem is broken down and its gates have been burned with fire. When I heard these things, I sat down and wept. For some days I mourned and fasted and prayed before the God of heaven. And so Nehemiah is hearing this story that it impacts him with such a weight that he says he sat down. He sat down. And it's not like he was physically tired and just needed to rest his legs. The image of the weight was so heavy in his heart that it took all the strength from his body and he collapsed. It's the picture of him connecting with somebody else's pain in such a powerful way. He lost all strength in his body and he collapsed. Now, Nehemiah had heard bad news before. We've all heard bad news, but there was something about this story that caused him to sit down. Now, Nehemiah is a guy who's got a really good job. He's like working for the government. He's living in the king's palace. He's got a great 401k, wonderful benefits. He's got a great parking lot at the palace. I mean, the dude is set. He's got everything he wants. And why would he be distracted by somebody else's pain, somebody else's brokenness? Why would that distract him in that moment? But it did. It didn't just distract him. It caught all of his attention. Because to really understand what's happening in the story is 70 years before this was written, the Israelites were living in Jerusalem, this city on a hill. It's God's chosen people were living in this wonderful place. And the Babylonians came through 70 years earlier and they completely destroyed the city. They tore down the walls, they burned the gates, and they took all of the Israelites, some 2 to 3 million people captive as slaves, and they took them back to Babylonia. Now, these are the same Israelites that came out of Egyptian slavery earlier. They lived in Egyptian slavery for 400 years. They were slaves. God was going to take them into the promised land, but something happened along the way in the desert. They wandered for 40 years. But they eventually got into the promised land and they were living in the promise. So they go from being a slave to living in freedom to going back to being a slave again. Yes. Just because you have freedom available doesn't always mean you live in freedom. And some of us know what it's like to go back to being a slave to old ways, old thoughts, old behaviors, old patterns. We look good on Sunday morning, exterior, but on the interior, we're bondage, we're in slavery. And the Israelites isn't just a historical narrative once ago. It's a present day reality of often how we can live. And so that's why we have to find ourselves in the story. And so they get taken back into slavery. And Nehemiah is a guy that is funny. His heart is broken for a city he's never been to and a people he's never met because he was born in Babylonia. But yet his heart was broken for people he's never met before. And about 15 years before this was written, the Babylonians released the Jews. They said, Israelites, you can go back to Jerusalem to rebuild your walls. But only about 50 or 60,000 of the people actually went back to Jerusalem. Only 50 or 60,000 out of the 2 to 3 million. Because often it's easier to live in the comfort of slavery than the uncertainty of freedom. It is often so much easier to live in the comfort because I know what I get if I stay in the place of slavery. I know what I get if I stay in this dysfunctional mindset. I know what I get if I stay here. Over there, I don't know what I'm gonna get, so I might as well stay here. And these 50 or 60,000 Israelites go to inhabit a city that was once 2 to 3 million, and they try to rebuild the walls, and it can't happen. Every time they start to build something, the bands of raiders and neighboring communities come in and they take everything, and they're like the bully at recess stealing their milk money. And they're building a sandcastle, and every time they build something, the waves of shame wash over it and wipe it out, and they have to start all over again. Because in that time, a city is only as good as its walls.
Yes, sir.
Because the walls determine the defenses of the city. Thick walls, high walls, you can keep the enemy out. But because the walls were destroyed and the city was desolate, they had no defenses. And we've got people sitting on your row that their walls of their life have been completely destroyed and they have no defenses. And the enemy sneaks in so easily and steals their joy. And what our man Nehemiah is doing, he is connecting the pain of heaven with the pain of the people, and he is becoming a conduit. And he is saying, oh my God, I feel your pain in heaven for your people. And he's sitting long enough to feel the pain of the people, because it says he mourned and he fasted and he prayed for some days. And what Nehemiah is giving us a glimpse into the why, it begins in a place of sitting in somebody else's pain. When is the last time you wept for somebody else's pain? When is the last time you saw somebody else in a situation that rather than get mad at them, you actually weep for them because they're defenseless and the enemy is stealing their joy? How many days he sat there, I don't know. But it says for some days, could have been 2, it could have been 22. And he sat there and he mourned and he fasted and he prayed and he was broken. And the beginning place of a why is a brokenness for somebody else. And that's what happens when he's sitting there. And what I believe at all of our locations, and if you're watching online, is you are positioned to rediscover or discover your why, because you are sitting down. And I believe the posture of sitting down is the place of feeling somebody else's brokenness. And I believe is God in heaven is looking to somebody on earth to say, who is sitting that can feel somebody else's pain? And I want to reach out and I want to speak to them and I want to reveal to you. I want you to rediscover or discover the why. Because if not, the pain of your past will only be pain. Because you will ask why. It will either be a question or an answer. Question, why did they walk out on me? Answer, I know what it's like to have somebody else walk out on me because there's somebody on my row that somebody's walked out on them. And God, you are positioning me, and why I'm on their row is to be a conduit to give them hope to what you can do in their lives. But he sat down, but he couldn't stay sitting down because God just didn't want him to feel bad about it. He wanted him to do something about it. So there came the point that he had to get up. And some of us would be well served to learn from Nehemiah's example to just sit down and be quiet. We're talking way too much. Others of us would do well to get up. God's been too good to you. He's done too much in your life. And he's saying, I've been so good. It's time you get up and give something out to somebody else. Get up. Starts with sitting down. It's about getting up. Oh, because why he was sitting there, while he was sitting there, he discovered his why. It was about taking a who, the Israelites, to a where, Jerusalem. The why is always about taking a who to a where. Not just from Nehemiah's life, but our Savior, Jesus Christ. He came to the earth as a man, sinless and blameless. And he walked up on a cross. They didn't nail him to a cross. He walked up on it. And then he sat down for 3 days. They didn't lay him down. He sat down. He gave it up. They didn't take it away from him. And he sat down for 3 days. And the world was having a party because they thought they won. They were high-stepping in the end zone thinking the game was over. But then the earth started to tremble. As our Savior said, 3 days have passed and it's time for me to get up. Because I am going to get up, because the why of Jesus' life was to take a who, you and me, to a where, into the presence of our God. A great why is about taking a who to a where. Say, why do you do? Say over here, say, why do you do? I'm believing that somebody's going to discover or rediscover their why today. I'm believing that's going to happen. For me, I grew up in Minnesota, and then I came to North Carolina, 25 years ago or so, and I started my life, my professional career as a college professor. I enjoyed it. I taught sports medicine for 5 years. I loved it. I was good at it. I enjoyed telling people I was good at it. And I lived life in such a way that I couldn't wait for someone to ask me, what do you do? It's like, I'm almost waiting, like, well, you're going to ask me, like, what do you do, right? Because I loved answering. I'm a college professor. You asked me, right? Like, I'm a college professor. Youngest one they'd ever hired. I loved me some me. I did. I was so full of myself. I so wanted to prove to you how smart I was because my worth was tied to my work and my value, my identity was tied in what I did. And I was so excited to tell you I'm a college professor. You're the same way. I send you a picture of a group. Who do you look for first? You. We all love us some me. And the vision statement of my life at that point would have been, see what I can do for me. See what I can do for me. See what I can accumulate. See what I can build up. See how impressive I can be. Not see what God can do through you. See what I can do for me. My whole life was defined by me proving to you how awesome I was. Sure, I knew Jesus and I prayed before meals and I led Bible studies. But this side of heaven, Jesus, I got it covered. The eternal ticket is punched, but this side, I got it. I got my career plan and I'm going to church. I may give a little bit here and there, but it was all about me. And I did it for 5 years. The first 2 years, I was doing my own deal. It was awesome. Year 3 is when I got married. And marriage is this wonderful refining process that I really thought she would just slide into my iCal and it would just become a part of my life. Like, here's what I do on Mondays, and I play softball on Tuesdays, and I work out on Wednesdays, and you will just become a part of my what? And then one day we looked at each other like, now why did we get married? Because if you're looking for success in your what, you'll never find significance. And we keep shifting what's. You don't need a new what. You need to discover your why. Because the beauty of Nehemiah's story is when he got up, he didn't go start a Facebook page and he didn't sell everything and move to Jerusalem. He went back to what he's always done. You don't need a new what. You need to discover your why. And he was a cupbearer to the king. He was a servant to the king. And he went back to doing what he's always done. You don't need something new. You need a new approach to whatever you've always done. When you understand your why, your what is insignificant. You don't need a new what. He goes back to doing what he's always done. He was a servant to the king. But the beauty of it is God gave him that access because of the impact he could have. Do you know that God has given you that access into that school, into that job, into that profession because of the impact he wants to make through you? You don't need a new what. You need to discover your why. Why am I doing this? And he gets into the presence of the king and it opens up a door for him to do something he could have never done by himself. He went back to what he has always done because he understood his why. And so when I'm teaching at Gardner Webb University, year 3 is when my brother, Lonnie, this is a picture of him right here, he gets diagnosed with cancer. I'm one of 5 kids, Lonnie, Luann, Leslie, Larry, and Lance. Yes, we all started with L. But my oldest brother, Lonnie, gets diagnosed with cancer. And I begin sharing my faith with him. He's back in Minnesota, I'm in North Carolina, and I'm sharing my faith with him over the phone. And what I realize is what I'm wanting for his life, I'm not living in my own life. I'm not smoking what I'm selling. I wanted him to just trust Jesus and he can do all things. But I wasn't trusting Jesus with all things. Sure, I was saved, but I wasn't living it that way. And I got the privilege to lead him in a prayer to give his life to Jesus over the phone. One of the greatest privileges of my entire life. But then we also prayed, God, physically heal my brother. He had a mole in his face. It spread into his lymph nodes, into his lungs. The doctor gave him a very poor prognosis, saying he would not live very long at all. And we prayed for him. God heal him. God do a miracle. God do a miracle in him. And we prayed. And the next day they go and do the surgery, remove lymph nodes, bring in x-ray machines, and they x-ray him that day. And they have the before x-rays and the x-rays from that day. And God physically healed him from cancer. The doctor said, we can't explain it. It's a miracle. The cancer is gone. Because God is still in the healing business. God can do that. God does that. It's not just a story once ago. He still does it today. And he healed him. We're like, whoa. Maybe there's more to life than what I've become. Maybe there's a greater why to my life than building up a big retirement and dying one day with a boat. Maybe there's more. And so the last 2 years I was at Gardner Webb, again, you don't need to do what? You just need to discover your why. Yes, the last 2 years at Gardner Webb, I started to understand my why. And I came to the place for me, this is for me, at the end of that 5-year season there, I walked into my vice president and say, I'm resigning today. Now, don't quit your jobs. This is my story. It's not yours. Don't quit your job. Why? Because for me, it was an identity crisis. My identity was so closely tied into what I did. I needed to separate myself from that what. It was an identity crisis for me. So I walk into my provost, I resign. I put all my stuff from my office in a box, and I go home. And I put the box on the coffee table and I sit down on the couch. And I say, all right, God, now what? Phone rings a little bit later. It's my brother Lonnie. I was like, hey, Chachi, what's up? Called him Chachi, it was his nickname. What's up, Chach? He goes, hey, it's been a bad day. I was like, what's going on, man? He said, yeah, I just left the doctor's office and it's not real good. I'm like, what's going on? He said, they told me the cancer's back. And they said it's in my brain. They sent them all my internal organs and they're giving me about a week to live. Oh, I was like, I felt his pain. I was like, God, why would you heal my brother, only let the cancer come back? That does not make any sense. Why would a loving father let the cancer come back? I don't get it, God. I don't get it. I sat there and I wept. And I wept. I was like, God, I don't get it. I can't understand this. Why would you let him go? He gave his life to Jesus. He's living for you now. Why would you let this come back, God? I don't get it. And I sat there, but then I got it. And I got up because I knew my why. My why was about taking my who, Lonnie, to where? Heaven. I knew my why. And so I go back to Minnesota and I walk into the house with my brother. And again, we're not a tall family. You think like Lollipop Guild if you think of us. And you hug my brother and you feel the tumors on his back and his hair is falling out and he can barely walk. And I mean, this is my big brother that when the neighbor kids would pick on me, he would beat them up. I mean, this is the brother that when I was too scared to sleep in the tent at night, he would come in with me because he didn't want to be alone. It was that brother, the one who looked out for me, and now I get to look out for him. And I said, man, sit down. Let me clean you up a little bit. And so I said, let me cut your hair. I just remembered this about a week ago. As a kid, I think he was picking on me, but he cut my hair a couple times. And now I get to cut his hair. And so I started cutting his hair, and I've never heard an audible voice from God. This is louder to me. And God was speaking in my spirit, and he was speaking in my heart, saying, this is my church. Care for my church. Love my church. Serve my church. And that's what I did. Do you know you can do ministry with a hair clipper? Do you know that you don't need a new what? You just need to discover and rediscover your why. How many of you think JJ should get a haircut right now? And so why? So I came back to North Carolina and I just threw myself into the local church. I just said, all right, God said, just serve the church, serve my church. That's the why of your life. So I just started serving in the church. We're in Shelby, North Carolina, this little church called Christ Covenant Church. And I just started serving. They said, we need somebody to do some construction on the building. I said, cool, I've never done it, but I'll figure it out. We said, we want to put carpet in the sanctuary. And it's like, I can do that. I'll figure out how to do it. But I thought, what would it look like if before we actually put the carpet down, we actually took the people of the church and we got down on our knees and we took a marker and we wrote the names of people that we love, the who's in our life that we're believing, because it's the what is not about the carpet. The why is the people that are going to walk on top of the carpet. You can have meaning in your life. You can have purpose in your life when you connect your why with your what. And so we got down and we started to write the names, and I started to write the names of the people that were close to me. Luann, that's my sister. John, that's my brother-in-law. That's Luann's husband. Kaylin, that's my niece. Mom, that's my mom. Lance, that's my brother. Butch, that's my other brother, but if his real name's Leslie, but if you were Leslie, you'd go by Butch too. And I got it. I got it. The who of my life. It started to set in motion some things that said, this is about the who in my life. And right at that same time at Christ Covenant, we hired this new worship leader, this bald-headed guy, just newly married from North Greenville College. Him and his wife came in, and he just preached the house down. Bald-headed guy, he was leading the all-black gospel choir, knew how to clap on the 2 and the 4, and I heard him preach. And the first time I heard him preach, I was like, oh my gosh, that's it. It's Pastor Stephen Furtick. And what I saw was the church that I always wanted, the church that I always wanted to be a part of. This is the church where I'm called to give my life, because it's all about bringing the who to the where. And God showed me who, but then God showed me where. It's all about the church. There's nothing about the church. That's it. This was 13 years ago I wrote these names down. Let me tell you what my God has done. Kaylin, my niece, Kaylin, She was the one that 13 years ago, divorce papers are on the table. My sister's looking at her husband at the time saying, I want to leave you. And my niece is calling me saying, Uncle Larry, I think it's my fault that mom and dad are getting divorced. She's the one that I set out the goal in life is just to become her favorite uncle. That's all I wanted to be. Just to be that place where she could lean when our life got hard. And we built a relationship. And I had the privilege 2 years ago at University City at the campus at Christmas Eve. This is a picture of her. That night, I got the privilege to lead her in a prayer where she gave her life to Jesus Christ. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely amazing. 13 years between those things. God is faithful to fulfill his promises. He may not be on your timeline, but God will always fulfill his promises. 13 years. And then I got the privilege a few weeks ago of baptizing her at University City because she fell in love with Elevation Church so much. She said, I'm moving to Charlotte. I'm going to college at UNCC just so I can be a part of that church. But that's not just my niece, Kayla. You know what? My sister Luann made a decision for Christ here at Elevation Church. My brother-in-law John made a decision for Christ at Elevation Church. My mom made a decision for Christ at Elevation Church. Lance, but you don't stand a chance. The gospel's coming at you like a freight train because it's all about a who being brought to a where. That's a powerful why. What's your why? And I thought you might want to hear from a few other people too, their whys. Because once you start to understand your why, you start to have power in your life. This is Phil. Everybody say, hey, Phil. Hey. He's from Concord. Happy 3rd anniversary, Concord. Phil is going to read you his why.
So here's my why. In 2009, my son Eli was diagnosed with leukemia. If he had not been diagnosed that day, he probably would not have survived another 24 hours. And that's when religion turned to a relationship with Jesus for me.
Come on.
Up until then, I was chasing money. I was chasing success. I was chasing a career path.
Come on.
And God showed me it's not about me.
There we go.
It's about him. Eli's chemo was scheduled to last 3.5 years. We so wanted to get to the finish line. But 3 months in, we realized it's not about the finish line and how quickly we can get there. It's about how can God be glorified in it.
There we go.
Since then, our lives have completely changed. Even though Eli still has significant health issues, we see God doing so much in and through our lives.
Yeah.
I serve because there's so many people who chase empty things just like I was.
Come on.
And they just need to know that all they're looking for is Jesus Christ. That's it. He is enough, period. I get to serve in Clubhouse. I get to lead my son Henry's E-group, the crew. What's up, crew? Henry's now in Worship Academy and serving along with the crew in Concord. Eli got saved and was baptized at Elevation.
That's awesome.
Ann and I, we just want to see what God can do in and through us by loving and serving well. And that's my why.
Say it one more time loud.
And that's my why.
I love it. I love it. This is Brian. Brian's at a Ballantyne location.
Yes, sir.
Tell him your why, my man.
All right, guys, this is my why. I grew up in a house that was low income. My dad walked out of my life at a very young age. I was the kid that was told that life becoming an adult would be mentally challenging. Through that, there was one thing I knew for sure. I had more of me than what people labeled me to be.
That's right.
Through some hard and confusing times in my 20s led to me being around people that were into drugs and all sorts of bad life choices. While going through a tough relationship, God found me in my escape place, the gym, through a stranger with an Elevation t-shirt on.
Love it. Love it.
They invited me, and soon after I saw the big picture that God had not let go of me. A few months later, I began to serve in E-Kids. I found out in serving that I get to be an example of love, which I used to struggle to understand and feel growing up. I get to show the love of Jesus, that same love that saved me and called me to represent him. And now I get to tell these kids you can go after whatever you want, no matter the obstacles, because the Lord is with you. And that's my why.
Come on, say it again loud.
And that's my why.
Come on. I got one more for you over here. This is Sky. Sky from a Raleigh location.
So I serve for the little girls who are born as the result of rape, and they wonder why that's their story, but don't understand yet that their story will impact countless people. I serve for the 14-year-old girl who has everything she could want, popularity, beauty, intellect, but lacks confidence in herself because she doesn't know her purpose in life. I serve for the 18-year-old girl whose parent is diagnosed with cancer and she doesn't know how she'll be able to go on without her best friend. I serve for the 22-year-old girls who find themselves far from home, scared, and not knowing how they will get out of the darkness and despair. My why is because I was that little girl born out of rape, that 14-year-old lacking purpose, that 18-year-old who watched her mother battle cancer. My why is because through the love of Jesus, I overcame all my hardships and discovered faith and favor like never before.
Come on.
My why is because I am not alone.
Say it loud. That's my why.
That's my why.
Come on, church. That's my why. Look what God can do when you discover and rediscover your why. Why is the most powerful word in the language you have. Why is the thing that can redirect your stuff. You don't need a new what. You need to discover and rediscover your why. Actually, I'd like you to sit down because Nehemiah began his discovery process with sitting down, but eventually he had to get up. And in just a second, we're gonna get up, but I want it to be symbolic and significant. I believe that something has shifted in your seat, whatever location you find yourself in. I believe that in this moment, you're starting to feel the potential and possibility of why God put you on this earth. I love Brian's story over here. The thing he always wanted, he gets to become for somebody else because he understood his why. If not, he'll spend his whole life looking for what. But he stopped and he said, there's purpose and there's meaning. Because another little kid out there needs to feel what I wish I would have always felt. He understood his why. What's your why? You may not fully understand it, but in a second, we're gonna get up and we're gonna believe that we're in the process of discovering or rediscovering. I'm gonna count to 3. And when I do, what I want you to do is symbolically get up out of your seat. I want you to get up like a rocket lifted you out of your chair, believing that God's potential and his best is in front of you. 1, I want you to stand up. Get ready, Lake Norman. 2, 3, stand up, up, get up. Get up out of mediocrity. Get up out of going through the motions. Get up into finding meaning and purpose for your life. Get up. Get up. So practically, what do you do with this? Some of you need to begin volunteering. You need to start serving somebody else and you need to give them what you've always wanted. Stop at an orange tent on the way out. Some of you need to sit down and write down your why, just like you heard these examples. Because the reality is time is gonna talk you out of what God talked you into. And you will wake up at a place and you'll wonder, now, why did I do this? Why am I in this? And if you don't have something to go back to, you'll always be searching. The why is an anchor for your boat in the storms of life beating against the boat of your life on the ocean. But the anchor of why can sustain you. Maybe that's what you do. I would encourage you to post it on social media. Hashtag it, that's my why. Share your story in a way that glorifies God and encourages somebody else. But all of you have an action step with your why. Put it into motion. Get up. But some of you, the greatest decision you can make today is to get up out of your sin. But the reality is you can't get up out of your sin. But Jesus made a way for you. Through him getting up out of the grave, he created a way for you to get up out of your sin. Would you bow your heads and close your eyes at all of our locations? Because some people are gonna make a decision right now for Jesus Christ. And you walked in here today, you might've been separated from God because of your sin. As you examine your heart right now, as you open it up, do you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? Have you trusted in him? You don't need to wander any longer. You can nail that down in this moment by trusting in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior. We're gonna say a prayer together out loud as a church family so that the person saying it or meaning it for the very first time does not feel isolated and alone. But God will hear you individually from heaven and he will come in and forgive you of all of your sins. Would you pray this with me? I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God who died on the cross and rose from the grave to forgive me of my sin. I give you my life. I give you my sin. And I give you my shame. Forgive me. And I'll spend my life following you. With your head still bowed and your eyes still closed, if you just began a relationship with Jesus or you're coming back to him again, I'm gonna count to 3. And when I do, I want you to boldly shoot your hand up in the air without hesitation, declaring that you've trusted in Jesus Christ. 1, 2, 3, shoot them up. Come on, if you just trusted in Jesus, come on, keep that hand up. Come on, I see it all the way up there. Come on, keep it up. Our ministry team is making their way to you. Want to put a Bible in your hands? A new Bible, signifying you're a new creation. The old